Hello everyone. So in this session we will just continue our discussion with respect to memory system. In the previous sessions we have classified the memories and we have just seen the hierarchy. Okay, now we will just see what actually we mean by the different types of memories. Here we will discuss read-only memory. So as the name implies, it is meant for read-only purpose. We cannot write anything. So it is a memory device where the storage medium is used to permanently store some information inside the chip, and this information is going to be stored only by the manufacturers and not by the individual users. Okay, so usually this RAM is going to be suggested to store the data that are required to start or boot a computer, because it is going to be a permanent storage. So the driver routines, the booting routines, and all these things will be initialized in the RAM chip. So it is of course going to be a category of non-volatile memory, meaning that even if the power is not there, the content is not going to be erased. Okay, even if the system is shut down, it will remain as such. Now this is going to be the sample chip, how it will look like. So this is going to be the ROM chip where all the startup routines are going to be stored inside. Stored inside, and we will just now see the types of ROM. As already we have discussed, one is called as MROM. It is masked read-only memory. So it is going to be the oldest type of read-only memory, and it can be configured by any integrated circuit manufacturer at the time of manufacturing. So usually it will contain the program or the instructions within the ROM chip, and it cannot be changed by the user. The next one is called as programmable read-only memory. Here of course the memory is going to be programmed by the manufacturer, as we have seen for mass read-only. Here we have the empty PROM chip, and once the user has written the desired content in it, then it is going to be permanently stored and we cannot erase it. So that's what we call as programmable. We can program this read-only memory for our own purpose. And next comes EEPROM, which is referring to erasable and programmable. So it is programmable one time, and then you can erase the content if you want to reprogram it. Actually this type of memory, it is also non-volatile, and it holds the data as long as the power supply is there, and it can store the data for the maximum for a period of 10 to 20 years. And if you want to erase any stored data, we can also erase it, and we can also reprogram it with new information we pass on. So for that purpose, for erasing the content, we will just pass on this chip to the ultraviolet rate for 40 minutes, so that the data stored in this will be fully lost. And once it is lost, then we can program it again another time by loading the fresh item into that memory. Next comes electrically erasable. Here in the previous case, we have discussed about an ultraviolet erasable, whereas here it is electrically erasable type of memory. Here it is also non-volatile, and the data cannot be erased. Okay, even if the power is off. But if we want to erase it and we want to reprogram it, then we can erase it by means of electrical by applying electrical energy. So the stored data can be erased, and we will not be doing more often, and it can be reprogrammed any number of times. And the data will be erased only one byte at a time. Byte by byte it will be erased. So the content is going to be erased by means of electrical signal, whereas in the previous case the content is going to be erased by exposing the chip to the ultraviolet rays. Then comes a flash RAM. So this is of course people will be used to this. Flash memory is otherwise called as pen type memory or USB. Okay, it is a non-volatile storage memory and can be written in small units called block or sectors. So flash memory is a part of it's going to be a subset of EE programmable ROM read-only memory, and the content of the data cannot be lost when the power source is turned off. It is usually this flash type of memory. It is usually used to transfer the information from one computer to another computer, or from any electronic gadget to the computers. Now I think we have discussed about the various types of ROMs based on the technique in which we are adapting for programming it, and the technique for which we are going to use it for erasing. Then comes advantages of ROM. So as main important characteristics, it is non-volatile in nature. So the content is not going to be lost even if it is powered off, and it is going to be static in nature, because the content stored is made permanent forever, and it need not be refreshed every time. And so it is easy to test and store large data as compared to random access memory, and by accidentally also we cannot change the content stored in it. And of course it is cheaper than the RAM, and it is of course simple, also reliable as compared to RAM. And then it helps to start the computer or the boot the computer by loading the operating systems in the read only memory. So usually this read only memory is going to have some fixed routines which is going to be specifically used, which is going to be generically used for all the computers, and especially this BIOS routine routine, post power on self test routine, basic input output system routine, and all the booting process will be stored in this read only memory. Coming to the disadvantages of ROM, it cannot be updated because we told it is only read only, we cannot write it, and so it is not possible for us to modify. And if at all we need to modify, we have to erase the entire content and we have to program it, provided the ROM has to support that feature. And of course it is slower than the random access memory which is used to store the data, and of course it takes around 40 minutes to destroy the existing data because it is going to do it byte by byte, and it needs some extra ultraviolet exposure, only then it can erase the data, or sometimes selective erasure is also possible. That all depends on the technique which we are going to adapt to erase the content. And now we will see the comparison of this RAM versus ROM. So RAM, as we already told, it is random access, and ROM is read only memory. And if it is read only, this RAM is also read and write. And here we have told type of access random access. Coming to ROM, it is also random access, and read and write operations can be performed here. Only we can do the read, and the data can be lost in the RAM, so it is volatile in nature, whereas it is non-volatile in nature. And of course this is faster and expensive, whereas obviously it is reverse of that, it is slower and also less expensive. And it's because it is going to lose the content, it needs to be refreshed after every few minutes or seconds, whereas here the data which is stored here is going to be static and need not be refreshed every time. And the size of the chip is bigger in compared to the size of the RAM for the same storage capacity. And there are different types of two types of RAM, namely the DRAM and SRAM. Whereas coming to this ROM, we have so many classifications based on the technology which we are adapting for programming it and for erasing it. So this completes the discussion of read-only memory. Now we will move on the discussion to secondary memory, also called as auxiliary memory. So as we know, main memory is going to be the memory which is going to be inside the cabin, and whatever the devices which are connected external to the computer cabin, that we are going to call as secondary memory devices. Okay, the secondary memory can be of any type. It can be a hard drive, okay, or it can be an USB or CDs, or it can be a flash drive or DVD. Like that, we have so many variations of secondary storage devices, and all these secondary storage devices, of course, forms a last level in the memory hierarchy, and they are all cheaper, and also it comparatively it is slower. So if you just compare the size can be bigger. Okay, so unlike primary memory, secondary memory cannot be accessed directly by the CPU. So if at all the CPU wants to read some information from the secondary memory, first it has to be loaded to the main memory, and then only the CPU will be able to process the data. There are so many secondary memory devices using different technologies. They can either go for magnetic type of technology, where we have the magnetic disk, hard disk, floppy disk, and also we can have make use of this optical technology, where we use optical disk like CDs and CD-ROMs, and also we can also have magnetic tapes. So coming to the features of the secondary memory, of course the speed is slow when compared to the prime memory, but of course the size is going to be huge, and the data will not be lost because it is non-volatile in nature. It is permanently stored, and it can store large collections of type for backup. So whenever we want to back up some multimedia content like audio signals or video signals or images or textual data or any kind of software, for that purpose we can make use of this secondary memory as a good option for for backup. And all the data stored in the secondary memory cannot be lost because it is going to be a permanent storage, and even if the power is off, we will be having the data available in the secondary memory. It has various optical and magnetic memories to store the data. Coming to the classifications of the secondary memory, as we have discussed, one is called as hard disk. The hard disk will look like this. So you will be having the storage devices inside this sealed caching, and all every computer will have large storage devices, and it will be having the permanently storing installed software, music, documentation, and other things which we need not be to be deleted. So that sort of informations can be stored in the hard disk. Then comes a floppy disk. Of course floppy disk is not nowadays recently used. In olden days we have used, the disk will look like this. Okay, there will be a notch, and this is also a kind of a secondary storage devices, and it is available in different sizes varying in inches: 8 inches, 5.5 inches, and 3.5 inches. And of course we need the floppy drive. So inside the floppy drive we will insert the floppy disk, and then we will the CPU can be allowed to read or write. And of course there will be a notch in this floppy disk which can be slided here and there, so that we can also do some write protection into the floppy disk. Okay, so it is rarely used, and it is a very low memory usage, and it is used only in the it is preferred only in the olden days. Of course the material inside this floppy disk is made up of some some plastic material with flexible magnetic coating, and it records information by making use of the magnetic principles. Then comes a CD, which is often used, and hope you all will be aware of this. It is it is an abbreviation of compact disc. Okay, the size is very much small, meager. It is easy to carry, and usually the CDs also will be used to store the audios, videos, files, and OS backup file, or any sort of information which needs to be stored and referred later. And the width of this CD also is going to vary in size based on the capacity of the data which is going to be stored. And of course, it uses laser light technology to read the information and write the content into the CD. Then coming to this type of CD, it can be CD-ROM, which is otherwise referred as compact disc read-only memory. As the name implies, these CDs can be used only to read the content from the memory, and we cannot write anything into that memory. And we have CDR, compact disc recordable. So as the name implies, it is also permitting us to record. So blank CDs could be available under this option. And as a user, we can start burning the information onto the disk. So the process of writing the information onto the disk is otherwise called as burning. For that purpose, we can make use of separate softwares available to record the program inside the CD. And the combination of the first two category, whereas we have CDRW, which is nothing but compact disc rewritable. So once it is stored, we usually use that for reading purpose. And if I want to change the content, that can also be done, provided if it is going to be bought with an option CDRW, where it is a rewritable CD. So we can keep deleting the data stored on it, and then we can rewrite with some other data which is required. Then we have the concept of DVD drive or disk, which is otherwise referred as digital video display or digital versatile disk. As the name implies, its versatility, it can handle any type of information, namely any media content. And it was developed in the late 1995 by different manufacturers. Of course, Sony, Panasonic, Toshiba, and Philips are well-known electronic companies which manufactures these DVDs. And DVDs also comes in two versions: either it is DVD-R readable or DVD rewritable, where we can erase the content and then we can rewrite. So it is going to be very much similar to that of the CDs, except that the capacity is going to be huge. So DVD recordable and DVD rewritable and erasable options are available, and we can store any of the media content whatever we are dealing with for processing and to be stored in this DVD. The storage capacity of the data, usually it will be in the range 4.7 GB to 17 GB. To that extent, the size is going to vary. And there is another concept called Bluray Disc. It is going to be a different technology, and it is used to store large amount of data. And especially when the video is going to have some high definitions, which is going to have some extra parameters to improve the resolution, then we can make use of this Blu-ray disc. Of course, it uses laser technology. So all the informations are read and write from the disk by using the laser technology, and it can store more data with a less compact size. So that's a technology of recent day, and DVDs can provide the capacities of 28 GB space to store the data. Then comes pendrive. I think pendrive, many people will be already aware of it. We will be using this pendrive, otherwise called as USB. It is a portable device, and it is used to permanently store the data and to carry the data from one computer to another computer. Usually, it is used for transaction or transferring the files from one to another, and it does not have any movable parts to store the data. It is supposed like a kind of an integrated circuit chip. It stores the data, and we can store any amount of data. The size of this pen drive will be varying from 64 MB to 128 GB. And I think this completes a discussion of all the secondary storage devices which has different versions. And then we will just in the next session, I think we will discuss about the cache memory and the other related concepts with respect to cache memory. Thank you.